And I will say hello to everybody on Zoom, and please let us know if the audio is not good on the chat. Can't hear me, let me know. I'm Allison Cavardella. I'm the president of North Shore CASA. We're thrilled to have you guys all here tonight. And this is our first evening CASA coffee. If you're not familiar with the CASA coffees, we normally do have them during the daytime in homes or local businesses. And it's a more casual, intimate way to get together outside of the school community. We typically have speakers. We go back and forth. One of us will have a substance use speaker, vaping, volume, and then we'll follow that up with the next month a wellness topic, whether that's parenting or mental health, things like that. So we're thrilled to have you here. We always have our coffee donated by Rob Mansfield and Grassroots, so please enjoy some coffee and treats, and thank you to Rob, as always, for hosting our events. And if you're new to CASA, our mission is to reduce youth substance use and abuse. That is why we are here. We are a board of 9, and I will just mention them all by name to thank them. Again, I'm Allison Cavardella. We have Kevin McGilloway, if you want to wave, he's our vice president. Bruce Kennedy is our treasurer. We have Annie Panetta, who's our secretary. Sanaz Baluch is in the back. We have Tom Berger here. Dan McDermott, who's not with us tonight. Our newest member, Alexa Traeger. Am I missing anybody? I think I got everybody, right? Yeah. Okay. So just so you know, buying a ticket tonight automatically enrolls you in our member list. So now we have your email. Okay, we have your email, and you won't miss a CASA event or a newsletter or anything like that. But for, what's that? Stephanie. Oh, and Steph Shapiro. I'm sorry. See, I knew. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. So for our Zoom audience, please, if you want to be a member, all you have to do is go to www.nscasa.org and sign up, and you'll never miss an event or a newsletter. So the good news is that CASA is growing. We have a member list of over 650 people. We're running events throughout the year. We have a wonderful partnership with the North Shore School District. We do events big and small. We partner with groups like North Shore University Hospital. We had a Saving Lives event last week. We have a youth group that is growing. It's currently at 10 members, and we're working with an amazing bunch of kids. And with that good news is a plea for more help. If you're interested in being a volunteer, we have on our feedback form an opportunity for you to let us know that you're available for volunteer opportunities. We have a Venmo account now in the back. There's, you just scan it with your phone if you'd like to offer CASA a donation so that we can keep doing the work that we're doing. We would love that as well. But, our message is always come on in, the water's fine. We're a friendly group that, cares about the well-being of our kids, and all of your voices and your help are welcome. So. And lastly, I don't want to bore everybody with stats tonight, so I won't, but I will tell you that North Shore students drink alcohol above the national average, and that is meaningful to us. And as a board, we're very concerned about the legalization of marijuana and the effect that that's going to have on our kids. So we will be doing a marijuana education event in the next couple of months. Please keep an eye out. But this event tonight was very near and dear to all of our board members' hearts. Many of us got involved in CASA because we wanted to, sounds weird, like save a life. That's what we came here to do. And it's a big ask, and it's a hard job, but there was a lot of lives lost in this community over the last 10 years. And when I heard Michael Gray's talk and shared it with the board, we knew that this might be an opportunity to get information out that could save a life. So we are very happy to have you all here, and we're thrilled to have Michael Gray of the Access Foundation, who is here to help stop the opioid crisis in this paradigm shift. So I give you Michael Gray. Thank you.
Thanks for coming out, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us and spending a little time learning about this fentanyl scourge. And we'll talk a little bit about what this is and why it matters to people here. You're going to see this word paradigm. I'm going to talk about a paradigm, something called a paradigm shift. There's been a paradigm shift in the drug death problem in America. And it's brought this, what I mean by a paradigm shift is it shifted the problem into places like the North Shore of Long Island. We were sort of removed from this many years ago, and people got lulled into a feeling that this doesn't affect us. But you're going to find out tonight how it really does. I'm going to go in two parts, and I'll stop for questions in the middle. We're going to talk about what fentanyl is and where it's come from and why it's having this effect in our country. And then we're going to talk about the specific way in which it's found its way into our community. And I promise you, I absolutely promise you, every single kid in this type of community between the ages of 13 and 30 is in the crosshairs of this stuff. Don't think about your old myths about opioid drugs. They're gone. There's a new paradigm. None of that applies anymore. It is your children. That's who's dying now. And I'm going to show you about that.
Did we lose connection?
Connection here? It's working here. This is, maybe this is negative. There we go.
Okay.
Now it's working here, but not on the beamer.
Yeah. Is this touchscreen?
Yeah. Oh boy.
Murphy's Law.
It was working. I was warning it for quite a while before.
Okay.
Okay.
And Mike, they're asking you to just, nope, like speak toward this thing right
Okay, can you hear me? Is it, shall I move closer? Is that it? Okay, so first question, what is the Actus Foundation? Actus Foundation is our family foundation, and it started in 2018. What happened in 2018, I'll tell you the story very briefly. This is my daughter, Amanda, beautiful sorority girl from Belmont Abbey College, North Carolina, grew up here in Long Island, went to St. Mary's School, went to St. Mary's High School, graduated from there. On January 7th of 2018, I was sitting at the Rutgers Athletic Center watching a wrestling match between the Rutgers Scarlet Knights and the Ohio State Buckeyes, my favorite sport, my favorite pastime. I got season tickets at Rutgers. Ohio State Buckeye coach, the best friend of mine, and I was sitting there watching a great wrestling match, sitting with my beautiful wife. My son was finishing his college wrestling career. He was captain of his team. My daughter had just come out of a mental hospital. She'd been suffering terribly for years. We found her a really good therapy, psychiatric hospital, and she was doing great. Everything was going well. We didn't have a care in the world. Everything was going so well. My daughter was really, really looking good. My son had just been concussed. He came off the injured list. He was ready to get back to wrestling. I'm watching this fantastic wrestling match from the great seats in that Rutgers arena with my beautiful wife and thinking, boy, life is great, right? Life is perfect. So 5 days later, my daughter died of acute fentanyl toxicity. And everything changed, right? It's all over now. What happened? Why was she dead? We couldn't figure it out. What happened to her? Why would my daughter die in the opioid crisis? What the opioid crisis? That's like addicts, people who live a different way than we do. What? She wasn't even a drug user. What's going on? Why is she dead? Well, as I started looking into it more and more, I started to see that there was something different about this opioid crisis that we were talking about. Something different about the way people were dying that was very different than the way it used to be, very different than what my thoughts were at the time and what I perceived to be the opioid crisis. My daughter had an acute mental illness And she'd been treated by different psychiatrists over the years and had been on different kinds of medications. But at that point, she had a problem where she came out of the psychiatric hospital into an outpatient treatment. And somewhere in there was a mix-up. She wasn't getting the meds she wanted. She went out to the street to get something to turn off a manic episode, and it killed her. Why? Because there was fentanyl in it. And there was enough drug in there to kill a whole football team. It was hopeless. She had no chance. So we started to think about this. What happened to our daughter? That's not how we thought people died in the opioid crisis, right? I thought it was the needle in the arm, don't care about my life anymore, just want to get high, whatever. And that's what we perceived at the time. We didn't know that we were in the crosshairs of this disease. Well, it's gotten far worse in the 3 years since we were all in the crosshairs. So I got involved. I started to look at it, see what's happening in the situation, start to look at the data. And I'm going to show you this data that I found that tells the whole story. And I'm going to show you that in just a few minutes. A little bit about me, who I am, 30 years in scientific instrumentation. I've worked in this crisis before. I've developed instrumentation for drug testing. I've worked in all sorts of different instruments. I have a lot of background in this. I've worked with pharma manufacturing, working on Q&A and counterfeit drug detection. So I've done a lot of these things. I've been around this quite a lot. I'm a business owner of a small company, Actus Analytical, that makes scientific instruments ourselves out of Manhasset, New York. And I'm a married father of 2 children, Roman Catholic, live in Manhasset, New York. That's me. But my most important qualification is losing my daughter to fentanyl. I got the call at 6:19 p.m. on January 11th, 2018. And I can assure you, that call, no one can possibly understand what that is until it happens. You do not want to be here, folks. Absolutely do not want to be here. Everything changes at that point. Everything changes. All for no reason, all for some stupid reason of this poison being dumped on us from the outside. I'm not here to talk about drugs and abuse and substance abuse and substance use disorder, or any of those things. So I'm not here to talk about cocaine, but I got to tell you, any kids who are here, or any parents who are talking to their kids, cocaine in America, bad idea. All contaminated. All of this rash of cocaine overdoses. Ever heard that term before? Who overdosed on cocaine? Well, when it's mixed with fentanyl, you do. And the cocaine in America is all contaminated. Stay away, stay away. Just a highlight message. Because what the overall message is that fentanyl changes everything. Everything we know and believe about drugs. This chemical is changing everything. And there's a good reason why. It's perfectly understandable. And let me walk you through it. Here's some quick facts. We lost between 150 and 180,000 young people last year alone. Hello? You see the CDC number's 93. Everyone agrees these are woefully underreported, but they're underreported in a predictable way. So Johns Hopkins University put out a paper and said if we multiply it by 1.8 to 2x, we're right about where we need to be, because it gets underreported for good reason. It's not a big deal. We just have to bias it up. So here's the number, folks. You know what that is? That's a 747 aircraft filled with young people crashing every single day for 365 days in a row. A 747 crashing every single day for 365 days in a row. If a 747 were to crash tonight, Tuesday, and tomorrow, Wednesday, it crashed again, and then by Thursday, what do you think we'd all be doing? The whole country would be shut down. CNN would have us all turned into half an aeronautical engineer watching over and over these reels of different things that happen in airplanes and what's happening in 747s. By the second day we'd do that, by the third day, you think we'd say, well, it's only one plane. There are plenty of 747s going out until one crashes. Or would we say, hey, flying's dangerous, they knew the risk. Good on them. Would we? But that's what we say. A 747 load a day dying, what do we do? What are we doing about it? Is it 24/7 on CNN? I don't think so. Who's talking about it? These are otherwise healthy, mostly young people. I mean, in the COVID, we talked about what a disaster this was with 2.6 comorbidities in people under 70s. These are young people with no comorbidities. These are healthy people. The death rate went 30% year on year last year. This is orders of magnitude worse than anything we'd ever seen before. It's getting worse and worse and worse. Look at this. This is your fentanyl curve here. This is death by fentanyl. Look what's been happening in the last 5 years. It's eclipsing everything else. All this one chemical. Why? What's going on with this? Who's at risk? Normal, typical kids. You people, your kids. You young people here, this is who's dying now. Forget about this urban stuff. Forget about people you don't know about. It's here in this community. This is where everyone's dying now. These are where all the kids are coming from, and the age is plummeting. I don't remember the last time I talked to a parent of a kid over 16 years old. 13, 14, 15, 16. These are kids with no obvious problems. They don't have substance use disorder. They don't have any problems. They just took a pill. One pill. One pill. Okay? So let's talk about some definitions. Just for the fun of it, does anybody know what heroin means? Anyone? Right. Why do we call this drug heroin? Anybody? Why do we use that word? You're right what the word is. So why is it applied to this drug? This drug is called diacetylmorphine. It's a very good drug, actually. It's legal in a lot of places. In America, we think of this heroin as this deep, dark, terrible, evil thing. It's not. It's a very good drug. I had a close cousin when I had a neck surgery a couple of years ago. It's perfectly okay. But it's been associated with this terrible, terrible lifestyle. And we've been steeped in this. And we're stuck in this paradigm of what opioid use is with the word heroin. Why is it heroin? Because they branded it for hero. You were right. When Bayer Pharmaceuticals branded this stuff in the 19th century, when they first extracted it from the poppy, they called it hero. Because you can have pain, have a cough, and you can still go to work. Hero. Okay? But look what we've turned it into. Rubber bands, greasy army jacket, dirty alleys, shooting up. Snorting and smoking became tremendously democratizing factors. Opioids started creeping into the suburbs. But in the heroin era, it more or less stayed where it was for the last 100 years. Then what started happening? What does fentanyl mean? Do we know what fentanyl is? Show of hands. Who's known this word? Who's heard of it before? Okay, so we know. Do we know what it is? It is synthetic morphine, right? Synthetic, man-made. Okay? Why is it so nice? Because it's man-made. Because we control it, right? Heroin comes from the poppy plant. We got to grow these poppies and extract this juice. We got to turn it into a powder. We got to do a whole bunch of processing of it to turn it into heroin. In 1959, Paul Janssen, a Belgian, invented this stuff called fentanyl. It's a synthetic version of heroin. That means man-made. I can make as much as I want. I don't need poppies. I don't need trees. I don't need anything else. I take simple precursor chemicals, I put them through a process, and voila, I've got this stuff. I make as much as I want. That's one great advantage. The other great advantage is I can do what's called analoging, right? I can modify the chemical to suit my needs. I can tweak it, I can change it. Why? Because God gives me the molecule morphine. It is what it is from the plant. This one I make, so I can manipulate that molecule and change in what we call the functional groups, and I can change the way it behaves. It's fantastic stuff, these synthetic drugs. We love them. And it's 100 to 10,000 times as strong as all other opiates. Cheaper to make, easier to transport. Much cheaper to make, much easier to transport. Producing and selling this stuff is a no-brainer. Heroin can't compete. The stuff is garbage. I got to have poppy fields and farms, and I got the law enforcement watching over me. I got to shift this stuff around. I put this in a nice, dark, easy lab, and I make all I want. It's great stuff. That's why these traffickers like it. China sent us the initial waves, but Mexico has been taking over. And of course, that's a lot closer to home. So that's what we mean by heroin and fentanyl. They are all opioid drugs, right? Opioid drugs, those things that attach to our immune receptors in our brain and flood us with dopamine and make us feel good. That's called the opioid euphoria response. That's what addicts are always after. It's all the same stuff. Heroin, fentanyl, Vicodin, Percocet, whatever you hear, codeines, morphines, they all do the same thing in your brain. That's why people do it. It's why a kid goes to a party and wants to party and he takes an oxy to get a buzz, because it gives him a buzz. It feels real good. That's why we do it. Okay, but fentanyl changes everything. So I don't know, a lot of people have seen the 3 jars, heroin, fentanyl, right? This is what it takes to overdose on heroin. That's a lot of powder, right? This is what it takes on fentanyl. This is what it takes on something called carfentanil. 10,000 times stronger than natural. Okay, so what do we say? Fentanyl is easier to make, easier to acquire than all other opioids. It's easier to ship and smuggle than any other opioid, right? It's significantly more profitable, therefore, and it's far more potent. So if I'm a drug trafficker, look at this. This is heroin. That's equal to this much fentanyl. Notice the guy's hand. This much heroin to this much fentanyl equals about 10 million doses on the street. Now, if I got to ship this stuff around and keep it out of law enforcement's nose, and I got to hide it from people, you think this is better than this for the same market? And by the way, it costs a fraction. This is why it's so good. This is why it's happening. There's a long story that I won't tell here tonight of why the Chinese engaged in this in 2013, but they did in that year. In that year, the Chinese started pumping this chemical into our marketplace, knowing the American taste for this diacetylmorphine, aka heroin, aka opioid, so they pumped this in its place. Why? Make money, kill us, active war against us, who knows? But they did, in a big way. Tons of the stuff started arriving. And after everything I just told you about how it's easier to make and acquire, easier to ship and smuggle, what do you think happened? The drug traffickers love this stuff. No more poppy fields. No more this stuff getting caught at the border. I'm doing this stuff, right? For the same market. It's wonderful. This stuff is fantastic. And I started to think how to make this comparison. As I started to look at the data, and I started to look how fentanyl was pushing heroin out of the marketplace. And I go to law enforcement training all over the country. I don't remember the last time I heard of a heroin bust. It doesn't happen anymore. Stuff's gone. The West Coast of Mexico and Jalisco and Nayarit, they have given up 80% of the wholesale value of heroin in the last 5 years. Why? Because fentanyl's so much better. So much better for a drug trafficker. In fact, I started thinking this through. In my own business experience in the technology business, when did I ever see a business dynamic where one product, a new product, was so much better than what it was replacing? And you know what I came to? And I thought of when I looked at the data, CRTs and flat panels. You remember this guy here? Tube TV, remember? And here's the flat panel display that replaced it, right? I thought of this example because like heroin and fentanyl, there's no comparison. There's nothing redeeming about this. Nothing. It has nothing over this. All it had in the beginning was price. It was a fraction the cost. So while a few rich people bought these, the rest of us continued to buy these, knowing that we were getting an inferior product, but hey, people get better stuff. That's the way it is. But as the economies of scale started catching up and the prices started coming down, we hit a price parity. And that teaches us something about the dynamics of this business of fentanyl and heroin. We hit price parity here. Anybody remember when they bought their first flat panel in their home? I can tell you, 2007. You all did. I used to be in the semiconductor business. I tracked all the data. I can tell you, the whole country bought one in 2007. Nobody bought one in 2006 with Bill Gates. In 2007, we all bought them. By 2008, these were fire sale at the store, and then by 2009, they were gone. That's the way it happened. Here's the data. I used to track it. Okay, so here's your tube TV up here showing the beat the band because this guy was about $50,000 to $500. But as economies of scale came in and this started coming down in prices, more people bought them. You see what's happening here, right? He starts losing his sales because people are buying this guy. And here it is, 2007, price parity. At price parity in 2007, everybody started buying these. Why? Because they were better in every way possible. There's no comparison. There's nothing redeeming about this poor, old, big, heavy, energy globbing tube. Okay? And this is how it works in this type of a market. Well, this is exactly exactly what's happening with fentanyl versus heroin. Heroin's disappearing. And who would have ever thought we'd be sad to see it go, but we should be sad to see it go. And I'm going to show you some data that's going to blow your mind in just a second. Why the loss of heroin is a disaster. Because it's being replaced with something so horribly worse. Here's what I mean. In the CRT flat panel, the tube is an old art form, not technology. It's hard to make, it's expensive to make. As the display needed to get bigger, the optical glass needed to get thicker and more pure. The cost went up. This, in the long history of the tube, people making tubes for 50 years didn't want to go out of business. They kept dropping the price and dropping the price and dropping the price. Well, the flat panel was expensive. So they held on. It's exactly what the Mexican farmers are doing with their heroin. They're dropping the price 80% in 5 years. They're holding on best they can. But they're going to hit their 2007 moment soon. And that's what happened over here. This inexorable process ensues. The CRT held on by taking the price, gouged by taking price hits all they could, and one day they couldn't anymore, and that was in 2007. That's exactly what's happening here. Natural drugs will always be tied to a plant and manufacturing facilities. Problem, trouble, quality problems, okay? As the demand for purity rises, right, supply streams get stressed because they can do less cutting and meet the demand of the market. Heroin's getting pushed and pushed and pushed. There's a long history of it, though. Those farmers have been at it a long time. They've got well-established drug routes. They don't just go away. They keep fighting and they keep holding on. They drop their price. But sooner or later, it's hopeless. Fentanyl's going to catch up. It's going to take over. It's already happened. This is why fentanyl is here. It came from China in 2013, and it was like the flat panel display coming into the tube market. It took over. It absolutely took over. There's one other interesting comparison that is the same between the TVs and the drugs, and that's it. Those of you who are old enough to have had tube TVs, how many did you have? If you were well off, you had 2. If you were rich, you had 3. How many flat panels do you have? I'm wearing them on my wrist. There's 2 computers there. I've got one in my car, my phone in my pocket. I don't know. I'm responsible for 20 of them. When the product is that much better, it goes places the inferior product never did. That's why, if we go back to this date just a moment, that's why what you'll see is it didn't just cross over. Look where it is already by 2013. We're all the way up here. The tube never sold that many. Why? Because I got 15 of them. That's what's happening with fentanyl. It's going places heroin never could because it's so cheap, it's so affordable, it's so easy to work with, it's so easy to move around that the traffickers are having a heyday with it. So here we go. It's easier to make and acquire than other opioids. It's easier to ship and smuggle than other opioids. It's significantly more profitable because of how potent it is. Back to our 3 jars again. But there's this one little problem. It's really hard to mix because it's like 10,000 times more powerful. And our dealers are not exactly blending engineers, and I'll explain what that is in a second. So it leads to it being the most deadly opioid out there. This is the problem, right? At least you think it's a problem. Local drug trafficker doesn't think so. Here's why it's so dangerous. So we all know this stuff is dangerous, right? Everybody, a lot of people heard of it, and we know it's dangerous, right? We know it's bad stuff, right? Why? Because of how potent it is. Sugar cube is about 1 gram. So a little bit of a little bit of science here called scientific notation. Move the decimals around to understand scale, okay? Sugar cube is about 1 gram. If I take 1/1000th of a sugar cube, 1/1000th, little guy this size, 1/1000th, that is a milligram, right? 1/1000th. If I divide that by 1,000th again, so basically, I make this little guy who's about like this big compared to a gram. This is what we call a microgram. And that's less than a grain of salt. This is the dosing level of fentanyl. This, in 10, is the dosing level of heroin. So when the dealer sits to mix up heroin with cutting agent, and he does a bad job in heroin, which he does, you get good bags and you get bad bags. Some people really get blasted, some people don't get much. When you do that with fentanyl, some people get killed, and some people don't get much. And that's just the way it is. because it's too potent for them possibly to handle. So in the pharma industry, which I worked in for a couple of years, we have things called blending chambers, blending mixers, and blending engineers, people with PhDs in physics. Because you know, when you mix these drugs together as powders and powders, we call that dry powder blending. This is really serious science. This isn't like baking a cake in your kitchen, where you're putting a bunch of ingredients together and then you're throwing some stuff in and causing an aqueous solution, putting it into the oven and putting some heat and getting it to mix. These are dry powders with absolutely no catalyst. These are dry powders that are just mixing together statistically, but they've got little charges on them. They repel, they static, they clump. You need PhD physicists to figure out how to mix this stuff. These big mixing chambers, and we will put infrared, FTIR infrared spectrometers on them to figure out the blending, figure out the mixing. You think the drug dealer has those $5 million mixing chambers? He's got the magic bullet blender. It's found in every single drug trafficking operation that gets busted. The bullet blender. And that's how he's trying to mix a microgram of dose. How do you think he does that? He does very poorly at it. That's why people die. So here's what we got. We got excipient over here, cutting agent, agent formula usually. API over here, that's the drug. That would be your fentanyl. And then we mix it all up, we mix it all up, we mix it all up. And this is about what it looks like when he's done. These are statistically right dots, by the way. Yeah, not counting. That's what I made. Okay, so now we sit down and we make our bags, our little capsules. And you see, most of it comes from out here, in here, it's all green. Nothing. These people are really not happy with their kill. They got a bag of nothing. They got a baby formula hit. Okay? This guy here, he got a little bit here, he's not happy either. This guy here, okay, getting a little better, we're getting in toward the middle. And then we got one little sweet spot in here, and everybody else gets killed. Every time they mix, they make lethal batches, period. I have been accepted, my testimony has been accepted as expert witness testimony in 2 jurisdictions, and the nature of my testimony is the following. If you're selling this stuff, you cannot deny that you know you're killing. I have the data and the statistics in court to prove that. That's how deadly it is. If you are selling fentanyl, you know someone's dying at the other end of your sales. It is the great difference. You know what's happening. The heroin dealer had the excuse, hey, I sold the stuff that 2 bags, he finally took 5, it's on him. Maybe it's a terrible thing to say, but it was true. No excuse here. Every time they mix, something's lethal. See the message I'm starting to get to for our people of North Shore of Long Island. Every time they mix, some number are lethal. And before you start thinking, well, who cares what they do with bags of heroin, we're going to get to that point in just a minute. So here we go. Easier to ship and smuggle, more potent, higher profits, easier to make and buy. But where's this one problem? So all of this is on the favor of selling, right? But people die. Isn't that kind of a problem, right? No, in the war world of drug dealing, death is an advertisement. So they liked that all those people got killed. They used to do hot shots to kill them. Now it's taken care of by itself. Because every time a drug kills somebody, all the addicts go to buy that drug. Because it's potent. Okay, so everything we've said here so far is to build up to this need of fentanyl, why it's here, why it's expanded. I still haven't gotten to why the people here should think of it so differently, right? This means that for your average drug addict out there who's in the street shooting up, life has become very, very dangerous. But why has it become dangerous for you kids here in the North Shore of Long Island who aren't out there shooting up? We'll get to that in just a second. So I'd like to take a little break here and see if anybody's got any questions, because we built up this story here. I'm going to get to why you people need to care in just a minute. But I'd like to take a short break so that we can have any questions. If anybody has a comment or a question on what I've said thus far, anything about fentanyl, about heroin, about why the Chinese did this to us, any of those questions, anything that came up through here that you wanted clarification on, I'd be happy to answer.
Oh, my beautiful girl.
Anything?
Are they putting the fentanyl only in pills, or are they putting it in gummies?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, okay. So the question is, are they putting fentanyl only in pills, or are they putting it into gummies and other things like that? Is that correct? Yeah. So for the most part, no. The trend is only into pills. Fentanyl right now is predominantly doing two things. It's mimicking powdered heroin, which people shoot up, snort, or smoke really hard. People hard addicted shoot up, snort, or smoke, and it's a white powder in a bag for those people. And it's mimicking different kinds of pills, pressed into pills. That's what it's primarily doing. There's probably some one-off situations where it is making it into those other things, but for the most part, that's not what they're doing with fentanyl. There was a time, you go back a couple of years, there were, these ecstasy and Molly pills that have these, bright green and bright red, and they have these crazy names. There was a time they were doing it out with fentanyl, but for the most part now, they're trying to fool you that these are real Percocet and Xanax.
There's a question online. Why don't you think this is getting enough press? Why isn't the US government talking more about this problem and how to address it?
So that's a great question. I can only tell you this. I've had about 12 opportunities to do significant media. And in every single one of those cases, when I told them what I was going to say, the interview died. I don't really know that answer. I do know that no one wants to talk. There could be a number of explanations. We could conjecture because it's just too big. We can't deal with it. A 747 a day is crashing. We have no solution to it. So what do? Pretend it's not happening. Just don't talk about it. Just say, hey, the people got on a plane. It was risky. Whatever. Because that's what they say. Hey, took drugs. I don't know the real answer. The fact that China is at the root of this, and the fact that we've got this tenuous relationship with them, and everything that's going on in the global scene, it's probably got something to do with that. But I can tell you, when I say 12 media outlets, I mean everything from the most conservatives on Fox News to MSNBC and Washington Post. All of them don't want to talk about the story. I don't really know the answer, but it's clear that they don't want to talk about it. So I try, and I tried. I banged my head against this wall for 3 years. I've been in Congress. I've been in both chambers of Congress. I've been in the White House 5 times in the last 2 years. I've tried everything. And I finally decided the only thing to do is to come here and tell you folks about it. So you'll tell your kids, don't take that pill. That's all we can do. Because the media and the government don't want to face it. I don't know. I can't answer the question. I can only tell you they don't. Any other questions? And the fentanyl rising?
One comment. Michael, thanks for saving lives.
Well, we'll see if we save any lives. We're trying hard enough anyway. So again, the buildup here is why fentanyl is here. And just a quick thing, there are about 3 converging dynamics that met in 2013 with America's famous opioid problem. When the Chinese saw this opportunity and they had a need to fill their pharma factories, so they came into America with fentanyl. And based on the few things I said about how good it is as a business proposition, it exploded, right? It totally exploded, and it's taken over everything. And here's the main difference. When you went from China to Mexico as the main source of the manufacturing, everything changed because their perspective on this was different. The Chinese, you can't deny Chinese involvement in this. The government was giving tax rebates to make this chemical. Now you have to understand, there is no import market from China for fentanyl. We don't need any fentanyl from China. It's very easy to make, and it's very low dose, and we use very little of it. We had no need of a single gram of this stuff from China. Why was the Chinese government giving 13% tax rebates to their chemical companies to make fentanyl bound for America? That doesn't make any sense, what the government was doing. And now they're continuing to give tax rebates for the base precursor chemicals that they're shipping. So you can't deny the culpability of the Chinese government in this. Mexicans is a different story. Those are drug cartels. Those are, yeah, they're infiltrated into the government, there's corruption, but they are fundamentally illicit organizations. This was all done by totally legit Chinese companies. Terrible. So that's why we got here. That's why the fentanyl is where it is. And as of 2018, before Amanda passed away, we were just starting to see the people like her who were not under substance use disorder. We were just starting to see it. My foundation, the Access Foundation, We started a coalition of the Fentanyl Awareness Coalition, which is a coalition of organizations like my Access Foundation around the country. I have two partners in that endeavor. One of my partners, Virginia Krieger, her beautiful daughter Tiffany, she had an injury to her leg. She couldn't get pain meds because of the problem. And a friend of a friend offered her a Percocet, a medical pharmaceutical Percocet pill. So she thought, one Percocet pill, what's the harm? She's got this terribly sore leg. She can't deal with the pain. She's dead. My other partner, Eddie Kobilis, his son Eddie, July 3rd, 3 years ago, he was going out to a party. A girl there he had a crush on. He was a little nervous. His friend said, "Hey, I got a Xanax prescription. They'll make you cool. Don't worry. Take the pill. You calm down. 1 bar of Xanax. Ain't gonna make you loopy. It's gonna get you calm. It'll be calm." Well, it wasn't Xanax. It was fentanyl, and he's dead. 19 years old. Those are my two partners, and I got thousands of those stories. Thousands. 13-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 16-year-olds. Okay. All because of this stuff. So let's talk about why we care, why we really have to care about this, why in your own self-preservation you need to care. Not for the good of society, but for the good of your family. Why is this coming to your home? Because of the rise of pills. China banned fentanyl in 2018 at the request of the Trump administration. Good move by the administration. Their heart was in the right place. Their head was absolutely in the wrong place. They should not have done that, but they did. They got China to stop making it in 2018. So what happens? Mexico picks up all the manufacturing. China sends them the precursor. Mexico starts making it. Guess what? Those manufacturers are no longer an ocean away. We went from Chinese scientists an ocean away to expert drug traffickers who now have control of this entire manufacturing base. And the difference between Chinese scientists and Mexican drug cartels is the Mexican drug cartels are expert drug traffickers. Once again, forget what you think you know about drug trafficking. These are not thugs with machine guns who have nothing in their toolbox but violence. These are very smart people who've been marketing illicit drugs for a long, long time, and they have all their trade routes set. Legal trade routes, but they got them. Okay, and they know how to use them, and they know how to sell drugs. So they made a marketing decision. As soon as they got their hands on this fentanyl stuff, they made a brilliant marketing decision. They said, this powdered fentanyl, it replaces heroin. So that means this powdered opioid is for the addicted people who shoot, snort, and smoke. That's like 3 million people in America. Well, that's a good market, 3 million people. They all use 10 times a day, and they'll sell their bodies and steal to get the money. That's a pretty good market, sure. But there are 25, 30 million people in America abusing opioid pills every single day out of pill mills in the Midwest. We produce 77 billion doses of opioid in the year 2018. That's twice as many as we really need. They were all going out to illicit purpose. So the Mexicans saw that, and they said, wow, look at that. But these people aren't going to go after a bag of powder. That's for junkies. I take my opioids a clean way with a pharmaceutical pill. It's all fake, as we know. If I'm taking anything that's stimulating my immune receptors, I'm an opioid user. But there's a stratification in this world. And these people say, I'm not a junkie. I'm not going to use a powder bag of drugs and snort it up. I want a clean pill. So the Mexicans said, hey, we're going to please. So guess what? We're going to start pressing this stuff in the pill, and we're going to go after the 25 million. They're getting so fortunate about 101 million people, 13 to 34 in America. That's their real market. We would call this their total available market, their TAM, right? Versus their SAM in the world of business. And this is how they think. They think in terms of TAM and SAM and EBITDA and all that. There's a businessman. Okay? That's what they were going after. That's what changed when we went China to Mexico. Business people who knew how to traffic illicit drugs took over the manufacturing. And look what they did. Look at this. 2015, 0 pills. This is from the Phoenix Field Office, DEA. 2015, 0 pills interdicted. 2016, 20,000, 54,000, 380, 1.4 million, 6 million, 10 million already this year, heading to twice that. These are interdicted rates. So multiply by what? I don't know, 20, 50, 100 times of what's actually coming in. This is what's being interdicted in one field office. So we multiply by 100. It's all about pills. This is what's happening. There's this massive shift to pills happening. Now we're getting to the North Shore of Long Island. I don't think too many kids in this room, or the kids and people in this room, are really shooting out for snorting heroin. Some will, absolutely some will. Some will get that affliction of substance use disorder, and right now, someone in this room is going to struggle with a heroin addict in the next couple of years, there's no doubt about it. But for all of us in this room, these pills are everything. Heck, taking a Xanax pill at a party, that's probably lower on the scale than drinking or smoking marijuana. I got to tell you, my nephew, when I first started this, had just graduated from Syracuse University. And he said to me, Uncle Michael, 2 things you should know starting into your advocacy. He said, I just graduated from Syracuse, it's a good school. And he said 2 things about the kids. When I first got to Syracuse, I was amazed. I was absolutely amazed at 2 things. The level of kids who came to college and went crazy partying. Division I athletes, top academic scholarship, musicians, drama people, every kind of creature at college, high achiever came to college, and they could not say no to any kind of drugs or alcohol. It was unbelievably universal. Number 1. Number 2, no one, and he said the word 3 times to make the emphasis. No one my age ever asks what it is. So the kid goes to the party, they take a pill. 5 years ago, that pill, if it said Oxy, it was Oxy. If it said Vicodin, it was Vicodin. If it said Xanax, it was Xanax. Adderall, it was Adderall. Someone had gotten it from a prescription somewhere. Yes, and the root of a lot of those prescriptions were illicit, these pill mills, but they were clean, well-made pharmaceutical pills that found their way into the wrong place. Okay, 1 Xanax pill ain't gonna hurt anybody. 2, 3 Percocet pills in the training room for an athlete ain't gonna hurt anybody. Nobody's gonna get addicted on that, no big deal. But within the past 3 years, this has all been replaced. So now when your kid on the North Shore of Long Island goes to the party Friday night and takes the pill out of the prescription bottle from their friend, there's about a 1 in 4 chance that it came from a Mexican drug lord and it's filled with fentanyl and it's going to kill them. 3 years ago, that wasn't the case. 5 years ago, it absolutely never happened. Here we are. And when something happens at this scale, in this time frame in our country, there's no way to keep up. There's no way for people to keep up. There's no way the kids could ever know. 26% of all these pills seen in the field office were lethal. 1 out of 4 lethal. And when I say lethal, you know what the newest dynamic we're seeing all the time? The half pill. I just, 12 days ago, this woman's son died. I talked to today. Half pill. Half pill, half pill, half pill. Somebody has a sense that something's very dangerous out there, so these kids are breaking them in half. Breaking it in half. Divided in 100, it'll still kill you. There's enough fentanyl in that bad end of the batch to kill a football team. You're breaking it in half. Break it into whatever you want. It's still going to kill you. We're talking about something that somewhere in that pill of 300 milligrams, is the typical size of the pill, is a few grains of salt. And if there are a few extra grains of salt, it will kill you. You think the bullet blender is mixing it at that level? No. Thank you very much. It's not. It's killing a lot of people. 26% of all these pills were tested to be lethal. Okay? And here we go. Which one's real, which one's fake? Here you go, that's your Xanax. By the way, Xanax, alprazolam, benzodiazepines, they have fentanyl doing it. It's an opioid. What do they care? You think they're doctors? They don't care. They got this stuff. It's cheap. It's plentiful. People want illicit drugs. They pack it in. You think they know the difference or care? And there's another one. Get one word out of your head. I've been fighting the media on this one for 3 years. There is no such thing as a laced pill. There is no such laced pill. These are not laced with fentanyl. They're made from fentanyl. The people making these fake pills have no access to a prevalent. They have no access to real drugs. They're drug traffickers whose only drug is the stuff they're making illegally. They don't have access to real Xanax. There's no lacing here. It's a fentanyl pill. Looks a heck of a lot like the real Xanax, but doesn't it? You want to bet your life on your ability to tell the difference at a party in dim lighting? Because that's what you're doing. Because if you got the wrong one, it sure looks the same to me. I don't know. So let's talk about this a minute. Paradigm shift. Paradigm shift. Thomas Kuhn, Structure of Scientific Revolution, talks about the fact that when we're doing scientific experiments, we do A and we add A and we B and we get C. We add A prime, B prime, we get C prime. Got a predictable set of variables. I got a predictable result. And then one day I do A and I do B and I get C. Whatever. When I can't explain it and I've gone through all my variables and I can't figure out what happened, something in the environment changed, we call a paradigm shift. In other words, all of the assumptions of the experiment change, move to a different plane, if you will. The problem doesn't get worse or better, the problem changes to a different problem. What we're seeing in the opioid epidemic is a paradigm shift from the old paradigm to the new, and the new paradigm is the North Shore. Okay? So why do we talk about this? Let me walk you through this data a little bit. It's one data slide I'll show, and it's very interesting, and it has to do with why we really have to worry about it. This is drug deaths in America, 1979 to 2014, in the blue. Okay, I saw this data presented in 2019. I saw it presented in 2015 on a video. So the scientist presenting it only had this much data. And he shows this line at a scientific conference and everyone gasps. Why? Because when I looked at this line from 79 to 2014, if you're used to looking at data slides, we call that a linear progression, right? It's very linear. So you've got this millions and millions of data points over 50 years that plot out in a linear fashion. That's weird. That's hard to explain. That's hard to understand. And so the scientist presenting it says, wow, look how linear this is. In fact, when I smooth it out and I tested it, it's 0.97 linear. It's perfectly linear. That's weird. No one can understand why. And he says, why is it linear? This is very, very prestigious scientist in public health. He says, I don't know. It just is. But in some sense, I don't care. I only know that it is, so I know it will stay linear. So he says, if I've got a problem 50 years this linear, it's going to stay linear into the future. That's what it's going to do. And I know this. So he says, we're all here to figure out where this crisis is going. Remember, he's saying this in 2015, but I'm seeing it in 2018, 3 years of hindsight. And he's got this thing, and he says, so where's it going? And he makes this plot. And he goes, pick a year. And he goes out here to 2018, and he says, and he puts the number, and he says, 50,000 people are going to die in 2018. That's the number. And he says, you believe that number? And he says, and I quote, I'll give you 2 to 1 odds. I'll give you 3 to 1 odds. That's what's going to happen in 2018. This is what actually happened. I knew that because it's 3 years later. I'm watching how much smarter than him. I just said, David, he didn't. Why was he so wrong? Why was he so wrong in his prediction? Because the paradigm. If I were to go to Dr. Berg, University of Pittsburgh, and challenge him, that is very, very smart guy, really good guy. If I go to him and say, you were so wrong, you said 50,000 deaths, it was 72,000 deaths in 2018. Why were you so wrong? What? You're a bad scientist. And he'd say, whoa. When I said 2 to 1 odds, 3 to 1 odds, this is what will happen in 2018. I meant unless the paradigm changes. Of course, everyone knew that. The paradigm changed. And when a paradigm changes, nobody can be trusted for data. I use this really silly example for this. If I come here to Long Island, New York, and somebody asks me to project book sales for next year, and I say, okay, and I go and I do my study, and I look at all the ways I figure out book sales. I look at book sales from last year, and I look at demographics, what the age distribution is, and so on and so forth. And I come back and I give a prediction. This is how many books will be sold next year in Long Island. You go, great, you print up all your books, you get ready to sell, and next thing you know, the virus passes over Long Island and everybody goes home. Obviously, I can't be held to my prediction. blind people don't read books. That's a paradigm shift. There's a paradigm for book sales when people can see, and there's a paradigm for book sales when people can't see. There's a paradigm of heroin, and there's a paradigm of fentanyl, and they're quite different. This paradigm of heroin, presumably, is continuing linear. We can presume that there's still this paradigm of the heroin drug overdose happening. But these fentanyl poisonings are something different. So when I first tried this data and looked at it, I said to myself, two things I know. When I look at this kind of data, so this is the actual that went like this, and this was the projected. And when I look at this difference, I say to myself, this is a paradigm shift. But there's something more important. Not only is this a paradigm shift, but when the paradigm shifts like this and the old paradigm continues, this gray area here is a definable data set. Who is that? What is that? See, everybody below the line, this is all dead. So these are all dead. Well, so are these people, but they're obviously different. Addicts, not addicts. Which are not. Kid goes to a party, cross player, 3.6 GPA, goes to a party, takes the pill, get a bus. That's the new paradigm. That's it. And look what's happening to it. Look at the old paradigm. Look what's happening to our paradigm. Look what happened last year. Look at all these kids. Regular kids. Normal kids. No problems, no troubles, no struggles. One pill, one party, one time. This is the new paradigm, folks. And it's here for all of us. No one can escape this. I beg you, if you think your kid wouldn't take a Xanax pill at a party, I believe in the world of kids today, that's less than drink. Everyone's doing that, but they need to stop doing that. The one thing, my message to all these kids is not forget about your parents, what they did. Your big brothers and sisters could go to the frat house and take the pill, wake up the next morning, worst was going to happen was a hangover and a guilty conscience. You will die. Very likely. It's a different world. Why can't you go party like your big brothers and sisters did? I don't know. You got iPads, they didn't. I don't know. Life is different. It just is what it is. You can't do it. Forget it. No Percocet, no Xanax, no Adderall. You can't do it, and this is why. Look how much worse it's getting. This is last year to this year. No one's getting it. No one's stopping. They're still doing it. It has to stop. I'm sorry, Allison, do you have a question?
Nope, I was just saying, maybe like 5 minutes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so, new paradigm. Here it is. The old paradigm of drug addiction. If I were here 10 years ago, I'd have to convince you all that your little cute 13-year-old kid is going to start fooling with drugs, and 2 years into that fooling around and overdoing to a party, they're going to get themselves a chemical dependency. They're going to go in, they're going to go out, they're going to go in rehab, and they're going to get recovery, and they're going to rehab, recovery, and 8 years later, they're going to get an overdose and die one day. And I'm thinking paradigms, because that's like the old Black Widow spider. She's in that dark corner in her web, and you go into that dark corner full of drugs, and you get caught. And you try to pull away, and it draws you in. You try to pull away, it draws you in. Back and forth, and then one time you're wrapped up, she comes in and kills you. But then there's wolf spider over here. He doesn't know us. He sits in the same dark corner, but when you're walking out in the light room, he runs out and attacks and kills you. That's it. Right? It's a very good indication of paradigm. One, I have to fool with it, and I have to get drawn in, and I've got a million chances to get myself free. The other, ain't nothing to happen. I'm just getting killed. Right? Old paradigm. Fool with drugs, recreational, rebellious, you got an injury, whatever, you got into drugs, you developed a chemical dependency, you used a few dozen more times, you're now deeply into addiction, you fail to get proper help, you become addicted. You use for 8 years, you go in and out of rehab, you go rehab and recovery, and relapse, and then one day, on the end of time, you get clean, or you die. But you had 10 years of chances, 10 years of opportunity. In the new paradigm that I'm talking about, you fool with drugs for the same recreational drugs for injuries, and you die first time you do it. Boom. No 10 years of time, no 8 years of time, No relapse and recovery to try to get sober. No, first time you do it, dead, gone. No second chances, right? So the new paradigm solution is awareness. Awareness for the non-addicted. For all those kids who are not addicted, for kids who are not doing it out of dependency, but just doing it for fun. America is too cavalier with pills. More importantly, we're much too cavalier with other people's pills. I got to tell you the story. It drives me crazy. North Shore of Long Island, very nice neighborhood. My daughter dies, all family and friends over in our house. 2 days in the shadow of my daughter's death from acute fentanyl toxicity. 2 of her friends say to my wife, "Oh, poor Nancy, you're so upset." You want Xanax? It's true story. We're too cavalier with other people's pills. Stop sharing pills. We do a thing called, I'm going to say this one last thing, the magic wand question. Magic wand question, social science. If I had a magic wand and I could wave it to have one thing done, what would I do? In the year 2012, for the drug problem, my magic wand, what would it do? If I could wave it over America and cure one thing, what would I do? Cure the disease of addiction. In 2012, if I could have cured the disease of addiction, all this drug death would go away. Today, if I did, remember what's going to happen if I cure the disease of addiction, right? What's going to happen? I'm going to stop this problem. Big one's still going, right? So, what do I have to do with my magic wand today? Today's magic wand, I have to create the condition where no one again will ever take a pill that is not prescribed to them by their doctor, given to them at CVS with their name on the bottom. If we could do that today, we'd have 100,000 people alive next year who will not be alive next year. Don't take other people's pills. Don't trust when somebody says, "I have a prescription." Please, just don't do it. We need to get this through everybody's heads. We need a massive, massive, effective campaign of just saying no to this drug. Okay? These kids will listen. You kids will listen. Why? You're not addicted to anything. You're not using out of a compulsion. You're using because what the heck? You want to get a buzz? Sure, why not? It's okay to get a buzz. Not anymore. Nothing okay about it. One party, one pill, one time. Just remember that. One party, one pill, one time. That's what's killing people. Tens of thousands of kids last year died on one party, one pill, one time. That's all it's going to take to kill you. And if you don't think this is a new paradigm, I know every single one of these kids. Believe me, they were not addicts. Believe me, they were not junkies. Believe me, they were never in an alley in their lives. Most of these kids took drugs 1, 2, 3, 4 times. And I know this guy here, 2-time Olympian, national champion, 2 Percocet pills because he never hurt his shoulder lifting. This poor guy, University of Northern Arizona, D1 linebacker, fentanyl. This guy, Tyler Skaggs, Major League pitcher, fentanyl. This is the new paradigm, folks. These people are just like you. They're just the same achievers that everybody here is in Long Island. They're all dead. Young kids, 13 years old, 14 years old, 15 years old. Don't do it. One party, one pill, one time is all it takes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have our local POP officers here, Officer Joe and Officer Eddie are here. They might have a perspective on what they're seeing on the North Shore of Long Island. If you just want to add anything to the discussion that's local, that would be great. And then, if there's any questions, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yep, just.
Mike's presentation was very powerful, as you can tell. He's spot on when he says that the North Shore of Long Island, wealthy neighborhoods are being hit with this problem. One time, you couldn't say it better than that. One time, one pill, one party. The worst call that we get. We get calls and unconscious 26-year-old male, unconscious 19-year-old female, took one pill. We hear that call, we show up, we already know as we're driving there's a fentanyl overdose. And then the worst thing is seeing the child or the young person, and then their parents. Awareness, start with the awareness. Try to get knowledge, teach your children. This is a major problem that we're dealing with.
Is there anything else that you're seeing the fentanyl in besides pills that people should be aware of?
Gateway is, I believe, marijuana.
It's finding its way into marijuana.
It used to be drinking, marijuana leads to other stuff, pills, hardcore drugs. Everything, like Mike was saying, is pretty much all with fentanyl.
And just something like, the neighborhood that we're in, it's never happened in my neighborhood. It is. Don't think it's, oh, maybe the poor neighborhood, maybe it's happening. It's happening here. We're seeing it. So it's not, because of the neighborhood where you live or what is, you know, nowadays now, like Mike said, it's still, you know, it's just still. You know, and then we're responding to more and more houses around here. All over, I mean, it's all over Long Island, it's everywhere. And it's just, the more knowledge you tell the kids, you know, you still feel whatever, just try to get to the kids, it's like, oh, it's, like I was saying, it's really one time that can end it all.
And like every parent, you know, we want to give our kids everything. So I know I spoil my kids and we try to be good parents, and sometimes we do it too much. And maybe start by asking, hey, what are you doing with that? You know, where are you spending this money? Where are you going? Who are you with? And just ask questions. You could be a parent, right? We're all parents. That's what we do. We ask questions. We were young. We all tried to get all around our parents and do stupid stuff as children. But this is elevated to such a level that's so dangerous.
Thank you.
Same question.
Yeah.
What are the signs of fentanyl overdose, and is there a window time frame that if you reserve somehow?
Can I just repeat the question
Please,
for
yeah.
Zoom? The question is, what are the signs of a fentanyl overdose and what can be done if you run into one?
Yeah, so of course, the treatment is what they call naloxone, which is brand name Narcan, you've heard of, the spray up the nose. So what happens is it's actually quite miraculous. Opioids attach to the mu receptors in your brain, in your lungs, and in your gut. And what naloxone does, it just basically knocks them back off. It literally undoes the overdose instantly. Now, the problem with this is, one of the reasons why fentanyl was invented is that it metabolizes much faster than natural morphine. That's why doctors like it, because it has a very quick action and it metabolizes and passes very quickly. So they can put you down and get you back up quickly. That's why we like it in medicine. The problem with that is it shortens. See, heroin, if I start to overdose in heroin, I'll know it, my friends will know it, someone can get the Narcan. The fentanyl is instantaneous. Coroner told me my daughter probably died within 1 to 2 seconds. So naloxone is the treatment. The signs of overdose, what an overdose is it's cardiac respiratory arrest, because the mu receptors in the lungs are responding and it's reducing your respiratory function. So what you got to do is get the person breathing, which is why when these guys come, they do the CPR and all that until you get them.
Speaking about the Narcan, as far as people who are addicted to drugs, we find out when we go to their houses, if it's an overdose, they already have Narcan in the house. So they feel like, oh, if I OD, someone will just give me a nasal spray of Narcan, I'll be okay. And they have that, I don't know, maybe assurance that they're gonna be okay. But we've responded to calls where we Narcan people 2, 3, 4 times with Narcan. And I don't know if people think that's okay to have the Narcan, they'll be okay. But nothing's definite, you know, like really playing Russian roulette.
Can I add to that also? We just had a Saving Lives event. Some of you may be aware where the officers were with us. There was an opportunity for Narcan training. I just got Narcan trained, as well as some other people on the board. We will post and share the next opportunity for people to get Narcan, naloxone trained. So, you know, again, just follow us. We'll send it out in an email or post it on the website. Your other question?
I would just make one further comment on that, and that is, I said there's analogs of the drug that get played with to skirt the law, one of which is what we call acetyl fentanyl. And there are other ones too that can be more Narcan resistant. They have these, as I said, these little slightly different behavioral characteristics that change functional groups. But acetyl fentanyl gained reputation as the Narcan resistant fentanyl. And what happens is when you put the Narcan in, it knocks the receptors clean. The drug will come back and reattach again, and that's when you need your second or your third dose. Most first responders will only carry 2 doses, and sometimes these people need 5 doses. They put them on an IV drip on all of this stuff because it keeps reattaching. So there's no guarantees with fentanyl. In the world of heroin, it was kind of predictable.
Very, very dangerous.
Now, the people who are dealing with them, do you see an improvement on arrest, or is it just,
So
one gets arrested and then there's 20 more to get caught, or?
there's always going to be a new player on the scene as far as dealing drugs. And if we do get a fentanyl overdose, it automatically goes to our detective squad, and they follow it up, and they actually try, with the help of other agencies, go after the fentanyl dealer, the manufacturer. And we've made numerous arrests on them. It just takes a long time.
Not only necessarily that it's coming from Mexico, but then the place is so directly green around how it ends up here, and like, selling it for it is big.
It's everywhere now, because once you go to the pill form factor, that's the common denominator. Everybody will take a pill. That's what the genius was of the Mexican traffickers, to put it in the pill, which is the form factor everybody accepts. So believe me, that they're coming from Mexico, they're in North Shore High School. That's it. It's just, there's no point in thinking about how it just is, and that's that.
Just to put numbers again, so you had something up on the Phoenix field office,
Mhm.
and what was the number?
10 million,
10 million in one field office,
yeah, interdiction,
over what time period?
a year. This year, so far, this year. And that's one field office, and that's interdiction. Remember, interdiction rates, now, DEA says 10%, I'm sure that's pretty almost 1%. So whatever those numbers are, multiplied by 100, that's what's getting in the country. So believe me, we are bringing in this stuff at between 1,000 and 3,000 times the rate we can possibly use it. It's everywhere. That's why I've turned my focus over the last 6 months from trying to deal with legislation and prosecution. And I've said, there's only one thing to do: get to the kids and tell them, please don't do it. I think that's what we're down to. We're not going to stop it. The only person who can stop it is the young kid who says, I'm not taking that pill. And then what?
Any other questions? Are there any kind of presentations done at the high school level?
On this topic, the question was, are there any presentations at the high school? Not that I'm aware of on this topic. The school just did Red Ribbon Week, which is about substance use and avoiding substances. But I do not believe, and the school will correct me because they're on Zoom if I'm wrong, but I don't think that they have hit on fentanyl directly at this time. And if I'm wrong, we'll update the group on that. Well, I would like to thank Michael Gray. Thank you for this really powerful presentation. And I would just add to say to everybody, both on Zoom and here, we're now educated, and so my suggestion is go out and share this message, one party, one pill, one time. That's what we can do as a coalition, is get that information out to as many people as possible, because not everybody's going to come to these events and not everybody's going to tune in. So you can all share it in your circles with your friends and your kids. And this is recorded. We're going to share it on our website, hopefully tomorrow. So if you want anybody to tune in, you can let them know to come find us. And other than that, thank you so much. Please fill out your forms, and you can return them at the door on your way out. Thank you.